Right. Good evening, everyone. I think, well, we're here. We're managing to carry on, which is great. Before we start the agenda formally, we've added back in the public questions. I know it's a bit more difficult in this case, but there is obviously some members of the public listening, so it's an opportunity if there is any questions at this point. If not, we can proceed with the agenda. Take that as probably a no. Obviously, if you've missed that and you want to, and do flag it up with us if you've missed the opportunity. Okay, let's press on. So we can go for apologies for absence. We're all here, aren't we? We're all here, so that's fine. Okay, declarations of interest. Anything to declare from the agenda today? No? Brilliant. Minutes of the previous meetings and matters arising. So I'm just going to get the so I'm flicking between to make sure I see you while I'm flicking my documents about, otherwise see if you raise your hand. There's elements on the minutes, last minutes, that we're sort of discussing this evening or update, so there's opportunities to raise some things there. I think it's nothing arising. Is there anything anyone would like to raise on the minutes? I'll propose that we accept the minutes in that case. And what's the second those? Councillor Martin, I think second those. Thank you. Okay, community gardening projects. So this is based on what we discussed last meeting regarding sort of gauging interest with members of the public on sort of community gardening projects around the town, trying to sort of get a bit of a list together of people that would like to do projects and how we can help those happen. So obviously working on the back of things like that already happened in Faversham. Brooke has very kindly been did some publicity materials sort of opposed to that then went on social media, and that got a bit of traction from the last time. She's also been sort of facilitating any sort of requests. So if people have been messaging in, she's been recording it onto a sheet so that we can kind of build up those that are interested and possibly even buddy people up eventually if there's particular locations. I mean, clearly it's going to take a bit of time, and also I think it's difficult circumstances. People have got very much other things on their mind, but there are some definitely keen people. So there's 5 people registered on the spreadsheet, which is great. But there is also there's 41 members on the Faversham Community Gardening Group, which was set up purely just to kind of keep the discussion going, but also to for people to raise issues and develop, and people can sort of discuss together. And of course, there is also the Faversham Environmental Matters Group, which was another kind of sort of Facebook group that was set up. So essentially, it's kind of progressing. I think it's at a point of identifying sort of locations that can then be sort of addressed with the relevant authority. Does anyone have anything to sort of comment or add to that at this stage? Yeah, Councillor Perkin.
Just to mention, the Millfield allotments have had a bug house put in. It's massive, and it just looks really good. So I thought I'd mention it. I've been to go and have a look at it, so it looks really cool.
So, Louise, sorry.
Sorry. So we've got this list of about half a dozen people now that have expressed an interest. I just wondered, are you thinking about giving them any budget? How are you going to progress that? Because obviously we've given some budget, we've just bought some bulbs which have been planted. I'm just thinking that we've got some money. So what's the plan going forward?
Councillor Perkin.
I think at the last meeting we discussed it, didn't we? And I think that we decided that if there was community gardening projects that wanted to go ahead, they'd put in an application for a grant through yourself. I think that's what the conclusion was. I think that's still sensible, because they can come up with proposals of how much money they're going to need to do their specific area. That might be something that we would need to help with in terms of costing, but then they can have a look at putting a grant application in, and then we can help with community garden funding. I think that's what it was. I don't think there was an overall pot of money that was dedicated to it, but I think that there was individual applications that we could look at.
Louise, sorry, I think you need to come back from it.
Yeah, shall I draft something then? Because I think our grant form at the moment is probably a bit too detailed. So shall I just draft a simple application form for that? Okay, great.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you. Have we approached any of the residents associations or the groups who do their voluntary gardening around the town to see if they need any support?
Thank you. I from the last meeting, I think when we sort of discussed this, I sent I start from the beginning. So from a while back, there was we sort of had a meeting with various representative organisations, I think back earlier in the year. The idea of having sort of a database of all these sorts of people, so that if we want to sort of get one message out, it hopefully can go out to people quite quickly. That that includes allotments and resident associations, people like Friends of the Earth, Plastic Free Fabrication, all the kind of active groups and individuals. I did send an email to that group just to kind of highlight that we're doing this, partly for their information, but also, as you suggested, to sort of that we're kind of here, because I think the rationale behind the grants, I think we discussed, was that it's limited to what we can physically do in the town, because the town council has limited property lands to do stuff on, as in quite quickly. I think it was an opportunity for things to happen and us to make a contribution. I think that's what I remember it being and why we did it. So maybe a bit of a sort of a push, a reminder to groups, and reminder on social media might be needed, just to kind of keep the momentum going, I guess, because it's quite easily lost. Does anyone have any other thoughts? Or Councillor Reynolds, you're on mute. Sorry.
Is that better? Yes? Yes, thank you. The group that I visited this morning in Crescent Road, I mean, I may have got this wrong, but I think you provided the 2,000 bulbs for them. They were very grateful for. And their next project, they were telling me, is up near the Shell garage at Macknade, I think, and they've cleared an area there. And obviously they were saying Anthony, I think they caught him yesterday at the Memorial Garden to remind him, and I think he's providing their next lot of bulbs. Obviously we need to keep these keen people provided with what they need, and they were very grateful, Chris, I have to say.
Yeah, we should say thanks to them actually for their hard work. Yeah. I intended to go down there today, but it wasn't ideal for me today. They put a request in for 2 lots of bulb purchases. So there's this particular one today, it's 2,000 on the Crescent Road. daffodils, and then there was another one which I think was the one you was mentioned up by the Shell garage, I think.
Yeah.
So so they're kind of I suppose two good examples of people requesting a small little grant for a project like that in this kind of simple way. So that's really good. And they obviously managed to do that during the current restrictions as well. So that which was good. So congratulations to them, really. So we all happy then for that to continue as it is. So get a sort of an application form sorted, and then just keep pushing it out. And I think I suppose the the seasonality of doing these things obviously matters, but I think it's going to be a bit of a kind of as and when, if a site becomes like, an interest in people and there's the people to do it, I think we just sort of support it as it goes. I think that's just the case this year. I think so. Okay, everyone happy if we move on from that? Yeah, great. So, tree planting, update on progress, including National Tree Week. Does anyone anything they'd like to raise on this subject before? Councillor Reynolds.
We did suggest that as the mayor, I would go into each of the schools and take a tree for National Tree Week. But clearly we're not allowed to go into the schools at the moment. So I don't know whether we can put a tree in a pot and just take it to their gate and let them plant it, or whether we wait until next year. I'm not sure, but we clearly can't go into the schools.
Sure. I think Councillor Martin would like to make a comment on that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Williams. I think the school's idea is a good one, but I think perhaps we'd have to look at the spring planting period rather than the autumn. And my suggestion would be we review that in January to see if we think that COVID restrictions may mean that we can do that. How does that sound to everybody else?
Yeah, I think that.
Councillor, sorry.
The town
clerk to say something.
Yeah, could I just remind everybody, well, we've ordered 500 trees that are due to be delivered week commencing the 23rd of November. And I doubt very much at this stage it's been paid. So I doubt very much that we can cancel that. So I just think we need to think how we can distribute those quite safely. And I'm sure that I think if we're coming out of lockdown on the 2nd of December, I think that week, because that's a Thursday, isn't it? I think we need to plan how we would distribute those the 2nd, 3rd, 4th of December to make sure that they're distributed before any other lockdown is upon us.
Yeah, that was I think that was something to raise today. Is that because I think the obviously we've ordered these trees like we agreed last meeting, which are the trees for the sort of big sort of giveaway, which was going to be done during Tree Week. So also working with the Fervisham Tree Group, which of course they've had to scale back what they do this year because of lockdown. I think it may be a case that we either have to do it before Christmas, so just after lockdown, or which I think is feasible if we can plan the right way of doing it sort of at the moment. Because essentially, I think what we're aiming to do here is what we discussed is that people can come and get a free tree, and then the idea is that we sort of map where they're going, and people sort of talk about it. So I think people it'll be the sort of task that I think people will quite enjoy doing post lockdown. I'm assuming when we come out of lockdown, there's going to be quite a lot of restrictions around numbers of people. So it may be we have to do some sort of slot system or similar. I'm not sure really what what the answer is. I don't know. Councillor Thomas has got his hand up.
Is it worth contacting the schools that were interested and asking the head about making some arrangements to get the trees to them? Either they come and collect them, or an arrangement for us to drop them somewhere just outside the school without actually crossing over.
Yeah.
Is that something to consider talking about?
Councillor, I think Councillor Martin wants to say something.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And if we've got 500 trees coming in, I'm certainly very supportive of doing the giveaway as soon as lockdown measures are lifted. I'm going to put a note of caution in. Obviously, that assumes that Swale will respond correctly to the national lockdown, and therefore we won't be subject to any of these tiers that were in place before this current change in conditions. And but certainly I support the idea of contacting the schools and saying, we're going to have some of these, how many do you want? I think that's the way I'd put it to them. And how many can you cope with, and how do we want us to drop them off or collect? I think that's fair. I think the idea that as soon as that weekend after the 2nd, as I said, with the proviso that we're not in any stricter measures than we were before we went into this period, then I think we can do that from the town hall on the following weekend. It won't be a National Tree Week, but it will be as close as we can get given the current restrictions.
Thank you. I think we've got kind of a few things going on here that might have got a bit merged together. So because we've got unless of course I've got it wrong, which could be possible. So we agreed to write to all the schools to say that the town council would basically donate a tree, sort of more mature tree, that will be presented, from the mayor with a certificate. And that letter went out we decided to compile it with other subjects we were discussing with the school to make it a bit easier. And then we had the big tree plant, which is it's actually 1,000 trees that are smaller, that basically are for the residents of Havisham to come and collect, plant in their gardens, or I suppose if there's a community group that wants to plant a few together, then that's fine. So that's obviously something we need to consider how that's managed. I mean, clearly it might be the case it has to be done over a couple of times, depending on what we can do, really. And then we've also ordered 3 trees for the front rents as well, which are to replace trees that were there before. So I think they're the things I've got down as the 3 sort of tree areas that we've kind of actioned. If that makes sense to everyone, Councillor Perkin.
I was just going to suggest that in the next few weeks, obviously we're in lockdown now for another 3 weeks, but maybe towards the end of November, when it's starting to look a little bit like we'll have an idea of what's going to happen, whether we could just have a small working group to decide on what we're going to do with these trees, because obviously 1,000 trees is a lot of trees, and we are maybe going to have to kind of look at the worst case scenario, in that we're in tier 3 and we can't have people come and collect them, and then also like the better scenarios. So just to kind of draw up some options, I think when we've got a little bit more information about where we're going to be might be helpful. So it might be worth booking a meeting in the middle of November, just to have like a specific focus on what we're going to do with those trees when they arrive.
Louise.
At the moment, I'm only aware of 500 trees. I'm just wondering where the 1,000. We've only ordered the 500 little ones.
I was just looking at the sales order from. It's because we've ordered hundreds of. I think it was £500 was the
right. Okay, that's where I'm getting confused.
Yes, 1,000 trees is £500 was that's it.
All right. We did also discuss perhaps a certificate from the mayor, didn't we? Present the schools with the trees. So
yeah,
We could possibly deliver one to each tree, as we say, in a pot with a certificate to the school gate, and they could take a picture of them, their children that are able to plant that tree, and send us a picture in of them planting the tree. But that will only take about 12 trees, will it? Or 15 trees, all the schools.
Has there been any response from the letters that were sent out? No, I think
they're all
yeah. I mean, the obvious, the obvious. So these trees turn up. I think they said around the 23rd of November or something like that. Possibly delayed. It depends on how they're working, I guess. So obviously the trees are going to be quite small. So they're kind of, 1,000 sounds a lot, but in bundles, it's not as many as it sort of seems. It's quite surprising, actually. I think in the worst case scenario, we're going to have to find somewhere to store them. Clearly, if for example, it has to be spread over a longer period of time, or indeed if we get to December and we can't have some sort of collection, it depends on the sort of restrictions we've got. We may have to move it into the new year, but I obviously the order's been placed, so we've got these trees coming. So I think what Councillor Perkins said might be logical in the sense of having a separate meeting of the logistics of how we manage the trees, and also how we then, if we know better by that point, if we can do a tree giveaway in December, how it's going to work logistically. So whether we have a weekend or 2 weekends or whatever it is, and we have, we limit the amount of people that come in at certain times. And of course there is obviously the promotion for that as well. So I don't know if everyone feels that that's the right way to do it. To me, it's quite, it's become more complicated than it should be, but of course everything is at the moment. So how does everyone feel like that? Kind of having a separate kind of planning. It doesn't have to be a very long meeting, but just for those that want to be involved. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, I think that sounds fine. I think we until we've got a better idea where we're going to be at that point, we're not going to be able to make a decision here tonight. That's very obvious, and I think it would be suitable for us to have another meeting around the time when they're due to be delivered, or just before, so that we can come up with a reasonable plan. I think that's the way forward, and I'd suggest that's what we do.
Shall we organise that via email in that case,
yeah, a working group to suss that out by email would be sensible, I think.
That sounds good. I suppose the positive thing out of all of this, although it kind of seems like a bit of a hard work, is that we've got 1,000 trees coming, which is very, very positive in this light of everything. And I think if we can map it somehow when we do it, it'd be great to be able to get an idea of where these trees are being planted in Faversham, to kind of add to the whole discussion. Yeah, Councillor Thomas.
I think we should be asking the question of why are garden centres allowed to remain open during this lockdown? And does that bear any relation to what we're talking about now?
In what context, sorry?
I'm just wondering why the government have allowed garden centres to stay open. They must have a good reason. And are trees something?
Because the plants and things they've already started growing would be wasted, wouldn't they, really? And we all need to be in our gardens. So
why do we need to be in the gardens, Alison?
Sorry, why do we
need to be in the garden?
Well, because you still want the garden to look nice, and there's things to plant out to make it bright and cheerful in these dowdy days that are going to come in December and January. So, and would the plants not be wasted if they're just on the shelves and they couldn't get them out? What would happen to them?
I would think it's something to do with health and well-being, to be honest.
Yes, that's definitely part of it. I think definitely.
I think I mean, obviously I'm biased here because I run a company that is involved in this, and I've had a bit of a moral dilemma in this situation.
Yeah,
because
it's difficult.
Personally, I would have understood it in the spring because it was an horrendous kind of issue for the industry. I mean, it's well, I'm not going to go into there, but I think it's to do with health and wellbeing. I think it's also to do with the industry, horticulture industry can't work from home, and basically that those businesses that rely on, probably not so much garden centres, but certainly nurseries and those that are open to the public in that sense, rely on those businesses to operate. So gardeners, for example. And I think there's a kind of, it's very vague, like a lot of government guidelines at the moment, unfortunately. And there are businesses that are open, I guess, that you could argue and say, well, why are they? As far as I'm aware, nurseries such as where the trees are coming from, for example, unless they've got an issue with their staffing or they need to furlough people because of finances, they probably will be operating as normal. Yeah, so Councillor Thomas.
And I'm not challenging why they should be open. I'm just thinking, are we making life too difficult for ourselves? Is the government trying to tell us something?
Probably. Councillor Perkin.
I think it's a fair point in that obviously you've also got exemptions for voluntary work as well, and if the government is saying, you know, you can have garden centres and stuff open, then giving out trees and voluntary work could potentially be fine. But I think what we need to do is look at where we are, I guess, in a couple of weeks. I think that's quite important, just because I think everything's still quite up in the air in terms of not wanting to create people, like big hordes of people coming to collect their tree all at the same time and that kind of stuff. I think that's absolutely relevant what you're saying, but let's give it a couple of weeks and see where we are then, I think.
Yeah. It is a sort of a valid consideration, definitely, and I think no commitment at this stage for dates is important. We sort of have a separate conversation about the logistics of it, I think. But the reality is we're right at the beginning of the season, so of planting, so we've got the time, so it's not a disaster, I don't think. The only thing I wanted to raise on trees was, again, I guess this is assuming lots of things, but I've mentioned before about that there's 450 trees to be planted at the Abbey School around the site, which was meant to happen in the spring or late, sort of early spring. There's still plans to do this in early December, because it comes under education. It can go ahead. I mean, obviously, I can report back at the next meeting, but in theory, that's an exercise that should happen, and I think that's quite relevant considering what we just talked about sort of mental health. Because I think to get some students outside planting actually would be quite a good exercise, in my view. So I think all being that they can still do it, I think we should. I personally think it's a good thing to do. Councillor Martin.
Sorry, you mentioned a particular school, so now I have to declare an interest as chair of governors. Sorry, I better do that every time you mention the Abbey School, Mr. Williams.
Yeah.
Williams.
Sorry about that.
No comment.
So is there anything else anyone wants to raise on trees, or is everyone happy with where we are at the moment? Yeah, Louise.
Yeah, could I just say, as we're not having Tree Week, have you had any thought about running a webinar or something? Because we have that facility, just to do something to mark the week in some way.
Yeah, Councillor Perkins, did you want to come in? Or?
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. I think that maybe if we chatted to the Tree Week people, maybe they might be the ones that can drive that, because they will have had speakers and stuff anyway booked in, wouldn't they? So maybe they can do, in similar vein that we did Environment Day, maybe they can put little videos together and then we can do kind of a Tree Week with that in collaboration with them, and then pop that on the Environment Facebook page.
Yeah, it certainly seems a shame to miss that week. I think it's quite a significant week. I attended a Faversham Tree Week meeting on last week, and you know, they're just sort of planning, you know, their things. They are doing some virtual. So basically, well, it's all virtual, but they've got some speakers. They've got some speakers they've organised, and the tree warden, or the guy, he's a sort of area tree warden, so he kind of manages the Faversham tree warden. He's going to do a virtual tree walk. You know, so he's going to film it, and then he's going to do a presentation via sort of a webinar sort of process, and so that will be really good. But I mean, obviously, if there's anything that the town council can do, that would be brilliant, because obviously it makes a lot of sense. So, if anyone's got any particular ideas of a subject, that would be really. If anyone's got anything.
Drying up.
Not off the top of my head, but what you've just said sounds like something we could help promote, certainly, and possibly even use, share via YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. And I would certainly like to see us do that Tree Week. But I do agree with you, Councillor Williams, we should coordinate with people that we'd already got booked in to do it, who are now doing it virtually, and see what they're generating, because I think that would be most useful.
Yeah. So I was distracted there. I was had another technical emergency, as usual when you're at home. Yeah, I think well, as you say, that using social media, etc., and it's quite quick to do. I mean, I did wonder, one thing that could be possible with these trees turning up before Tree Week, the 3 trees to be planted on the front Brents, whether they could be planted during Tree Week, and a sort of video done of the planting to sort of explain about tree planting or something like that, because that's a kind of a physical activity that can be done with a couple of people. I mean, it could be Madam Mayor, it could be yourself there, sort of civic kind of to start that week off, or start the tree planting season off with another. It could be Adam. I'm just thinking aloud here, sort of as a potential kind of outside kind of thing that can be recorded and then talked about as kind of like a tree planting thing, or it could just be talking about trees in general, about, you know, the benefits of trees and why we're doing this, and you know, how it fits into our kind of whole climate emergency. There's lots of topics. I mean, what we can do, I mean, again, to save having to sort of spend too long on this evening, we can sort of ban some ideas via email, sort of get some ideas. And I'm sure Brooke's been really great at helping with the technology of these things as well. So we all kind of seem to be set up for it. Does that sound okay? I mean, I really like the idea. I think we really like the idea, don't we? So
to mark it some way anyway, to have an amount of marking.
So definitely. It's sort of recognise that it's a bit different this year. Hopefully by then we know about the tree plants, so we can talk about that as well, about the tree giveaway. I mean, okay. Is that everything on trees? Is there anything else that anyone would like to sort of raise at all? Okay, great. Right. So I have to excuse me. I've got like loads of tabs open, and I'm just into new glasses, and I don't feel very well. So it's kind of a feat of doing this evening. So on to item 6, Electric Car Club, to report on a meeting with co-wheels and make recommendations. Town Clerk, I don't know, is there anything you would like? Have you got a sort of a report that you'd like to report back on the meeting? Would you like me to sort of briefly summarise?
You can briefly summarise, because we haven't actually received anything in writing from them. So if you want, and I'll add if I.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I think there's a couple. I think Councillor Thomas was there, and essentially, so this was something actually that was raised, I think, by when we was talking with Swale about their kind of climate emergency and about the possibility of ways of those people that perhaps don't feel like they need to have a car or a second car, or perhaps find it difficult to have a car living in somewhere like Faversham, the opportunity of having some sort of shared car scheme. And this particular scheme is called Co-Wheels. And it's essentially an organisation that have got kind of schemes going around around the country. They've got some locally to us, Canterbury. And there's sort of two ways that it can be done. So they can have sort of bays within a car park, like central car park, where there's cars sort of there, or they can have on-street car parking. And it's essentially a sort of a booking system, a bit like hiring a car from a car hire place. But it's a scheme where you would sort of pre-join, and you'd have that kind of application ready to go, and you pay for the kind of time that you need to use the vehicle. Part of the other sort of attraction, I guess, is that what they currently do is they either do fully electric or hybrid vehicles, which I think, from the point of view of what we're trying to do, and obviously trying to sort of reduce vehicle emissions, that's quite an attractive thing. So it's essentially like hiring a car from a hire place, but it's a sort of a permanent fixture within the town. And as I said, the location of the cars would be obviously decided upon, and whoever's booking it would know where the location is. I mean, some sort of basic things. For example, so you would register with the company, you pay a one-off sort of membership fee, which is then refundable, assuming you book within a certain period of time, and you pay per, I think it was by the hour or 15-minute increments, something like that, and that means then you can book it for, I think, up to 2 weeks. So it requires an investment, because they're perfectly happy to provide the vehicles and provide the sort of infrastructure, but the investment is quite great. But it was worth in finding out about it, because I think it's been mentioned a few times, and it was sort of come up to that point where obviously we need to sort of consider what we're looking in terms of budgets as well. So I don't know, Louise, if I probably haven't explained that particularly well, to be honest, but if I've missed anything, whether you want to clarify anything from what I've just said, or Councillor Thomas even, actually. Councillor Thomas was there.
Thank you. I didn't think they were going to provide any infrastructure for us at all. They would provide the 3 cars as long as we gave them quite a large subsidy, which is the problem in my mind, because we don't really know what the demand for them is going to be. They may not even be electric, the vehicles that we get, so it could end up being hybrid, and people are just driving around using them as cars rather than not using them as electric cars. So personally, I wasn't keen to proceed at the moment, not with that particular cost that they were asking for. Thank you.
So yeah, Louise.
I agree with Councillor Thomas. I couldn't quite understand, and I don't think it was really explained fully, just why we had to pay a subsidy. I think they called it a subsidy. If they'd said you have to buy the cars, I think that would have been clearer. But to say that we had to do a subsidy, it also wasn't clear whether we actually made any money from it. I know they said it was a community company, but and I find it strange, actually, because they are the most common company used in the well, in the country, lots of councils do use them, and I just couldn't understand the subsidy part of it. So I think we need to look elsewhere, although they do seem to be the main company doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I think the it was a very, it's almost to me like the scheme relies on the bankrolling of the participant. So I think obviously well, in pretty much all cases, it's the local authorities that do it. And my understanding is that it's almost like it's a bit of a carrot waving in front of you. If you invest this money, and I think they were talking somewhere like 40,000 upwards, wasn't it? Really, I think it was for the hybrids, and then I think it was more like 60 for the fully electric. I think they when I mean infrastructure, I think I mean, well, I probably said the wrong word. What I meant is they supply the vehicles, but then of course it's essentially would be bankrolled by us or whoever did it. And I think the idea is that that they hope that you kind of have the need there to then it pays for itself eventually. So you're providing that service, it pays for itself, and then they provide. It's no longer any cost to you in the future. But it's a big outlay for something that's firstly unsure of the need, and obviously quite a considerable amount of money. I mean, the thing that I got from it is I wonder whether as a town council we need to do some sort of survey or something to understand the needs of people in Faversham, because yeah, I mean, we can certainly look at other schemes. I think there's no harm in that, but it'd be interesting to see if there's a sort of a genuine desire for something like that in the town, because it may be that people are thinking, yeah, maybe they'll be thinking about getting rid of a car, but they might be thinking about cycling rather than hiring vehicles. Who knows? It's just an idea. That's something I thought of about this guy was talking. Yeah, Councillor Martin.
Sounds to me like this is something that was designed for tier 1 and tier 2 councils, and not necessarily parish and town councils. To my mind, it sounds like something as part of an overall strategy. I don't know whether there are other town councils that have invested in this, or how many there may be about around the country.
Yeah,
Frome do it.
There is. I mean, Frome's doing it. There is primarily. You're right, Councillor Martin. I think it is larger councils that are doing it. Yeah, so Councillor Thomas.
I believe that Swell will look at it at some point. Whether we can work with them, I'm not sure. The other thing is that any of the new developments that come up around Faversham, that we can request that car clubs are part of the 106 agreement that the developers have to pay into, so that they're paying to have a car club with points installed on their new development, so their residents can share cars. And I think that's a good way forward probably in the long term. But I think we should keep an eye on what the Borough Council are doing as well, unless we can find a much more economical alternative where a company doesn't want such a large upfront payment. And the other issue I didn't like about the presentation we had last week was we wouldn't even own the cars after we were given this subsidy, which was a bit of a turn off for me. So yeah, I think we just got to keep exploring other options. Thank you.
Yeah, Louise.
Yeah, Councillor Williams, you mentioned doing a survey, and I wonder if that might be something worth pursuing now, and then that will provide evidence if Section 106 money does come up. So it might be worth putting together sort of 10 questions for a survey around it, and perhaps that's something that we can do.
How does everyone feel about that? Do some people get to a
Sorry, it sounds good to me, that idea. I mean, we're obviously we're in the process of formulating the neighbourhood plan and what have you. I don't know whether I'd hate to tread on the toes of those that are dealing with that, but is that something that would be part of that, or is it something that we'd have to survey separately? Either way, I think we do need to find that information out. So let's ask the general public.
Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, I like Councillor Martin's point there, and I think doing a survey is a good idea, and we should ensure that we're communicating with the neighbourhood plan group, just so they're aware of what we're considering doing, just in case it overlaps with any work that they're doing. Thank you.
Okay. Well, if we, Louise, are you happy to sort of draft something, sort of some draft questions you think it might be, and then we, if it's circulated and we liaise with the neighbourhood plans group, then hopefully we can sort of think of a good way of getting that out there. I think to be honest, a social media starting point would probably be good, and then there's, you know, look at the other methods, but it certainly give an idea. But I think at this stage we're kind of, excuse the pun, but we're going to probably park the idea of co-wheels until we find out a bit more information. Yeah. Okay. Has anyone got any other question, anything you want to raise about this sort of idea? Okay, right, thank you. So let's move on to living roofs for bus shelters, to report on meeting and make recommendations. So the town clerk and I had a meeting on Friday, so there wasn't really a time to do a comprehensive report beforehand. But this is something we discussed right back when we set the budget last year, about sort of green roofs for bus stops in Faversham. I mean, clearly, obviously, this year is put it behind, and I think we were trying to understand the kind of what sort of bus stops we could do and what the process was. But we've gained some more information, which is quite useful, and I think that the meeting we had with the gentleman was really useful. So for those that don't know, so all the bus stops are managed differently, in the sense that some are owned by a company called Clear Channel, and some are, I think, directly owned and maintained by the borough council, and clearly I guess there's some that might fit somewhere else, but that's my understanding from this meeting. And Clear Channel sent a list of all their bus stops in this area that they deal with, and there's 3 in Faversham. One is Newton Road, outside the library. Got the one on the Mall by Jewson's, and there's one on Stone Street, sort of kind of by the kind of nearer Preston Street end of Stone Street. So they're the 3 that they maintain and they own. So we went through those 3 locations and had a look at what the possibilities were, and the sorts of things that have to be considered, or they have to consider, is that they have to consider the structure of the bus stop, because obviously if you put in a green roof on it, it adds weight. They have to obviously consider things like sight lines and positions for vehicles if it's too close to the road, because they may have to move the bus stop or make it bigger, depending on what it is. And it became quite clear that there's sort of the 3 bus stops I've mentioned are kind of 3 quite different ones. So, and in fact, the one, for example, at the Mall was what they said was a heritage bus stop, which actually is one that they don't construct anymore. So they're all 3 quite sort of different bus stops. He had a concern with the one at Newton Road and the library. He said that would kind of potentially have ramifications for the road, but the Stone Street and the Mall ones were quite possible. Essentially, what happens is, so the bus stops that have advertising boards on them, like the one at the Mall, that has a revenue that basically pays for the cost of maintaining that bus stop. Those that don't obviously are paid to be maintained, cleaned and replace the glass and things like that when they need to be done. So obviously if we were to go down the path of looking at a green roof on a bus stop, then basically a complete brand new bus stop will be constructed with this particular roof on. Now the green roof is a sort of sedum sort of living roof that is obviously one that's sort of basically drought tolerant and one that helps soak up pollution. Is good for biodiversity, so it's very, very low maintenance. I think he said that they'd only need to come and inspect it or potentially water it on when it's established and sort of twice within a year. So it's not something that needs regular maintenance, and it is something that the company would maintain. So it's not something that the town council would have to maintain. The sorts of costs involved kind of are dependent on the sort of shelter they go for. So for example, if it's a shelter with no advertising on it, it's about, I think he said roughly about £7,000 to £8,000, but then there's a fee to maintain it. And then with an ad shelter, it's roughly £11,000 to £12,000. Now the fee, so the negotiations have to be between obviously Clear Channel, who are very happy to do this. It's something they're increasingly doing, but essentially the permission, if you like, and the kind of negotiation needs to go through Swale, and has to be sort of a three-way conversation, because it, you know, as this chap was saying, that the fee, for example, might be paid by the borough council, you know, to maintain it. So there's lots of kind of unknowns. So essentially the intricate details need to be gathered through Swale Borough Council, but Clear Channel are very happy and very happy to work on this if it's something we desire to do. That's it kind of in a nutshell. Obviously he showed pictures of the designs, but which is something we can get for everyone to look at, but it's sort of, he's an engineer, so obviously like a lot of these things, it's just a picture of loads of building structure things on it. But it was really interesting to understand if it's possible, and that was where we were. Yeah, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Just a quick one really, and a quick comment. Given what's in our budget still for climate and bio, that I believe is around 14,000, and given I don't think we've got many commitments on it, that does sound like a very promising start. Looking at it, I think you said Stone Street was out because of the location and sight lines. I can understand that, it's close to the junction.
Sort of Newton Road was the one that they had concerns with.
Newton Road, okay, in that case I would suggest let's ask them what it would cost for Stone Street, and let's see if we can work with the right. First of all, we'd have to write to the Borough Council and ask them who we talk to there, to saying we'd like to do this, what do you think, and who do we work with to get that done, who runs the Clear Channel contract effectively, and let's see where we go from there. I think the town clerk already knows who does that, so she could write to him, the officer, directly and ask. I would suggest copying in the cabinet member for the environment, because Swale may wish to use some of their environmental monies to contribute as well. And let's get some facts and figures and see if we can actually get one of those done this year, this financial year, this civic year. I doubt if we could get it that quick, but it would be certainly worth trying.
The lead time is 16 to 18 weeks. If we placed an order, for example, if it's all agreed and we placed an order, 16 to 18 weeks. Obviously, assuming that COVID doesn't have anything to do with it. Sorry, Councillor Perkin.
Councillor Thomas is before me, actually.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Thomas.
How much is it going to cost? And you said it has to be a complete bus stop replacement?
Yeah, so he said he couldn't give any. Obviously, they'd have to do it if essentially we were keen to look at a bus stop. and Swale were happy for us to go down that path, then obviously they'd come out and do a full assessment. So they have to look at various things, the highways, the pavement, make sure there's
Did they give you a ballpark figure? How many
Yes.
thousands?
Yeah, so a non-ad shelter. So Stone Street is a non-ad shelter. So it doesn't have any advertising boards on it. So that would, to replace that, it would cost between, he thinks between £7,000 and £8,000. But then there's a maintenance and an annual maintenance fee to keep it clean, because there's no advertising revenue from that. He said that in some cases the borough council in that area sometimes pick up the maintenance fee because they have obviously they pay maintenance fees for other shelters, but that is a consideration.
So is 7,000 the cost of purchasing it and installing it?
Yes. Yeah. If we went for one, if it was one like the Mall, for example, it's already got an advertising board on it, which obviously can stay there or not, but the advertising board pays for the maintenance. Essentially, it costs more. It costs between 11 and 12,000 to install, but then it's a one-off. There's no maintenance fee from there on because the revenue from the advertising pays for it. He didn't actually say what the maintenance fee was. I'm guessing it's because he didn't know, to be honest. He essentially, they haven't done many of these living roof ones. It's something that they plan to do a lot more of. He said, but it's based on, they're quite keen to do it, but they can't afford to just go and do them willy-nilly. They have to kind of be commissioned to do it, and it's a buy-in from the local authority. So I think Brighton have done one. And there's been a few projects, some examples that's actually on their website, which is really good. But it was quite a quick turnaround meeting. I think we didn't expect them to meet, and all of a sudden they popped up with a meeting on Friday. So we kind of tried to get that. So that's why it's a bit sort of not kind of a proper report, but that's where we are with that at the moment. Yeah, Councillor Perkin.
I just have a question about the Newton Road one. Do you know what the specific problems are? Just because obviously that's quite a newly qualified AQMA near there, and I would imagine it would be more helpful to have a green roof near something like that than further away. Is it just because it might shed onto the road?
When he asked what would be, he said if there's one location preferable, which one would it be? And Newton Road was the one that I equally had a similar kind of view on. Clearly this was based on him looking on electronically, based on his knowledge of it. But his concerns was the narrowness of the pavement, because he said that the new shelter would have to be either moved back slightly or slightly bigger. So it's about whether there's enough room for disability access either through it or past it. And he said also, because there's a junction, albeit it's an entrance to a private car park right next to it, he said that there's highway considerations. He said it may not be a problem. He said, but out of all of them, that's the one he would have sort of more concerns about. He thinks there may be some highway issue. But clearly, if as a town council, as a committee, we decided that was the one we really wanted to have a look at, then obviously they'd come and have an assessment and possibly do an assessment on a couple. So it would probably make sense if we wanted to progress in any way to have them assess a couple. So we've got options, because there may be, the costs may vary. So maybe Newton Road can be done, but it costs more because of certain things they need to do with the highway. I don't know. But I agree, Newton Road would be a good location. Yeah, Councillor Perkin.
I'd just be interested to know other people's thoughts on it, because obviously you've got the Watling Street, which is obviously also an AQMA, and the Mall comes off of there, so that's not a bad place for one either. I don't know. I just think because of the new issues that have been highlighted in terms of air pollution around that junction near the bus stop on Newton Road, it would be interesting to find out what exactly the problems were and whether they're not insurmountable.
Sure, thank you. Councillor Thomas.
So which bus stops were the £7,000 ones?
This applies to any of them. It's more of that's kind of a stock figure for a one of these units that has a living roof on. So obviously when they come and if they come and do an assessment and a full quote, they obviously, if there's certain other factors that they haven't considered, then obviously that would have to they would include that in. So for example, he was saying that the advertising one costs more because they have to put an electricity supply in for the advertising boards. And he said, assuming that everything is okay with the supply and everything like that, then that's a kind of a standard figure for those sorts of structures. But it's like anything, until they actually make an assessment of it, we wouldn't have an exact figure.
Can you remind us of the locations of the ones that didn't have a poster?
Yeah, so I think Stone Street was the only one that didn't have an advertising board on. The other two, Newton Road by the library and the Mall, both do. But equally, he said they don't have to. It's just they always have done, and that just pays for the maintenance. So we could decide if it was something that we wanted to push, we could decide to have one without. That's just the way it's always been. And these structures, they have identified them as being quite old, but they don't have any plans to make any changes to them unless obviously they were asked to. So for them, it's a relatively new way of going with the structures, with the bus shelters, but it's something they're getting asked for a bit more now because obviously the climate.
I was just thinking about our budget and what we can afford out of the budget this year.
Yeah, Town Clerk would like to come in. I think she might have some question.
Yeah, I thought my understanding was that we needed to speak to Mike Knowles to see what type of bus shelter they would be happy with. So basically, if we want to try and get the I say cheaper version, if we speak to Mike, it's whether they want the advertising option or not.
Yeah, so I think that is the thing. Is it's got to be obviously. Mike Knowles is the next step. Mark Knowles was the first step initially, but he was the one who took us back to Clear Channel because so we're kind of back to Mike Knowles again. So yeah, I think we need to we've got there's sort of three locations, whereas before we had kind of essentially any location, whereas now there's sort of three locations that are within the Clear Channel. Under their control, it gives some basis to go back to Mike Knowles and say, well, we've had this discussion. There's these three shelters. What's the views of the borough? And it may be, as I said, that some of the extra fees, like the maintenance fees, can be covered by the borough council, because that's something that he said that Clear Channel said that happens with other other local authorities. So it's this was like a preliminary gathering of information. So of course we can't make any decisions really until we've Mike Knowles has had a conversation with. In Prince, does anyone have any questions relating to this particular this information that we've gathered from that meeting? I mean, is everyone happy for it to be for the town clerk to contact Mike Knowles to progress it and see where we are?
Yeah, sensible.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's a good idea. Let's do it.
Okay, well, let's do that then. Let's have a look at where we are. So, right, so we're on the budget, review budget. So, let me find. I've lost the budget. Here we go. So we've already sort of broadly mentioned where we are with the budget at the moment. And we haven't really spent much of this year's budget, partly because some of the things that we were talking about spending were things we've just mentioned that obviously haven't progressed until just recently. Has anyone anything they'd like to raise? Anything based on this year's budget, or anything they'd like to raise that they'd like to consider for next year's budget? Because obviously we're at that point now as well. Yeah, Councillor Martin.
I think looking at what we spent, which is very little from that budget at the moment, but also bearing in mind the cost of 3 bus shelters, should we wish to do that, and other things, I think we should bid for the same funding as last year, rolling over the balance from this year to be included in it. That way, the events that we were going to do that we couldn't, we may be able to do next year. Who knows? You know, the news media and the Prime Minister briefing this evening do give some hope that we may see vaccinations for the most vulnerable groups going ahead over the next year or so once they've been approved. So let's assume, which is always dangerous, that we will get some events in, probably not all next year, but and certainly more the following year. So I would propose that we bid for a further 15,000 rolling over the 14,497.75, and that one of the items we put on there is that should give us the funding then to do 2, possibly all 3 of those clear channel bus shelters, and hopefully, if not, it will certainly give us at least 2 of them, and let's see how we go from there.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to make comment on that? No. All right, Councillor Birkin.
Sorry, just a little one. Obviously, next year we'll be looking at hopefully having events again. So I do think we need to consider that when we're looking at budgeting for next year, because as I completely agree that I'd like to see a couple of Green Reef bus stops in Faversham, I think that would be really positive. But if we are going to do kind of the community engagement side of things that we wanted to do this year, that is going to require some money next year, hopefully, that we'll be able to do that. So I think it is worth just mentioning that. I also think it's worth looking into using some of our budget next year to look into online marketing, because I think that, you know, we've spoken today about the 1,000 trees that are going to be going out to the community, and actually if you can invest a little bit in kind of boosting social media posts and stuff, then you can get a little bit more engagement in your activities. So it might just be helpful to think about that as well. I'm completely with Councillor Martin in terms of asking for the same budget as this last financial year. I think that's sensible, and hopefully we'll be able to do a little bit more with it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's really good. That's brilliant comments. And I'm in agreement really that I think that many of the things that we originally when we obviously it was the first budget set for this sort of committee, and we were kind of broadly around a lot of engagement, because that will help with the whole sort of climate mitigation. I think it'd be really good to definitely sort of aim for the same budget again. I think what we will probably find is we'll start getting more community grant applications through as well, with hopefully some little projects turning up. And I know, for example, with the bulb planting that happens today, I know, for example, that they've already asked, hopefully they can earmark some for next year to continue it. So that will be the reoccurring thing, is there may be things that we can contribute to on an ongoing basis. So I think it's worth it. I think, you know, this has been a blip this year, meaning we would have spent probably more so far. So I'm perfectly happy with that proposal, taking that forward. In fact, I think Councillor Perkin, you seconded that, haven't you, that proposal? So has anyone got any questions further on that, or any suggestions of anything else that we haven't talked about? Can we just vote that we're all happy for that to be the case? Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Okay. Let's talk travel from KCC to discuss ways for FTC to engage. I put this on the agenda because Councillor Thomas emailed rounds this. Admittedly, it was a little while ago. It was obviously between the committee meetings, critical committees. I just thought it'd be worth flagging up, and I don't really know. Maybe Councillor Thomas, you've got anything you'd like to sort of mention on it, but I just thought it's worth raising it while it's there. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, thank you for bringing it up, Councillor Williams. Unfortunately, the officer who's now dealing with it at KCC has said that the deadline is this week. I did communicate with some schools, but I think what with the situation going on at the moment, nobody has showed an interest in using the services of Active Mob. So I think we've unfortunately run out of time on this. I thought we had more time, but the deadline is Thursday.
No, that's fine. Thank you. I had a feeling it would be the case. I just thought I'd put it on here, and if there's anything significant we could bring up, then we can. But that's fine.
Thank you.
We will we'll bring it up again if something similar. Yeah, Councillor Perkin.
Yeah, I was just going to say thanks to Councillor Thomas for approaching the schools on it. I think that it's worth just keeping it in the back of our minds. I know that obviously we've missed the window for like this particular piece of work, but it's always ongoing. It's important still, so we can definitely, you know, when things with the schools have calmed down, because it's an incredibly stressful time for them, we can just kind of approach it from a different angle, but with the same topic. I think that would be a way forward.
Yeah, Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, Councillor Perkins got a good point there, because when you look at the school's travel plans, they haven't been updated for 10 to 15 years from KCC's records. So a memory jog or something needs to be done there. I don't know how they go about updating their plans, but there's obviously room for something to be done there. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Martin.
Declaring an interest in schools, I think you'll find part of the reason that KCC haven't had those plans updated is they used to insist on it as the mandatory authority, and of course most schools now are their own bosses as academies or parts of academy trusts. So I think it's and therefore they look to the DFE, and it's the DFE that would have their travel plans, not KCC. It sounds crazy, and maybe academy trusts think that the DFE pass back down what they've had, and the chances are they probably don't. So it's worth considering, and certainly I'll be encouraging everyone to do them. But I think also it's a question of priorities. It comes low down the list, unfortunately, when you've got people saying, how are you going to improve standards and bridge the gap between those that had computers at home for COVID and those that didn't.
Yeah, Councillor Perkin.
I know in previous discussions this evening we've spoken about the crossovers that might happen with the local plan and what they're doing, and the neighbourhood plan, and I think that travelling about and how people get around the town and the connectivity of new building developments is quite a focus for the neighbourhood plan people that are doing that work. So it might be something that as a committee we can again work quite collaboratively with them to be able to look at encouraging the schools to do a bit of feedback around that question.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think these sort of things are going to come up quite often, and it's worth us, you know, making sure that we're kind of working with colleagues. I mean, clearly things like walking and cycling and active transport is something that the town council were talking about a lot anyway. It sort of fits within our priorities, so you know it's not going to go away. And a lot of things, in fact, we talk about, and within this committee, was relevant for the neighbourhood plan, and other things. So I think it's definitely, I would agree with what's been said on that. So I guess really it's a case of keeping it in the back of our minds, and if anything else comes up that we can discuss, then we'll keep that conversation going. So any other comments on that at the moment? Right. Okay. Let's move on. So, sorry, computer failure. Okay, item 10, Climate Coalition, consider joining. Now, apologies, I should have sent some information about this prior to the meeting, but I'll explain why it's on here, and I can send the information around afterwards. I went to a NAUC event, a training event a little while ago. It was about sustainability, rebuilding sustainable communities, and one of the things within that presentation was very interesting is there was a lady from the Climate Coalition there, and it's an organisation that obviously are championing collaborative working within climate change sort of work. Particularly they work a lot with smaller councils, sort of town and parish councils, and I think it's something that now we're quite keen, they encouraged kind of their members to think about joining. As far as I can see, there's no joining fee. I think it's free to join. It's more of a kind of a commitment, of a pledge really, rather than a kind of joining an organisation. I think it might give us an opportunity to be part of a community of other like-minded councils and other organisations, and there may be resources that might be useful, because thinking right at the beginning when the climate emergency was declared, one of the points within that was to join the Covenant of Mayors, which was a something which we agreed to do. The problem we've got now is that's an EU initiative, and at the time I was convinced that it wouldn't be a problem, but of course that's come to become a problem. So my personal opinion is it gives us another organisation to have some sort of collaboration with, possibly help with benchmarking and kind of making sure we're kind of doing things the right way. Does anyone have any comments or any reservations? Or Councillor Perkin?
So I was looking at this the coalition, and they've got they've got a 10-point plan essentially, haven't they, of how they're going to improve in the environment, and none of them are unreasonable, I don't think. They obviously, quite a lot of them rely on pressuring the government to commit to the climate commitments that they've made, especially in terms of kind of carbon neutral housing, and also things like net zero. So those are all things that I think the climate emergency are based around anyway, so I think that it's perfectly fine. I think also looking at the people and the organisations that support it, some of them we are working with on other projects anyway. So I know the wildlife trusts have signed up, and CPRE and the RSPB and things. So having read through it, I don't have any massive reservations. I think it's helpful to have another kind of overarching kind of guidance coalitions. That sounds, I'm all for it. I think it's a positive thing to do. Thanks.
Anyone got any other comments on it? I mean, have a look on their website if you haven't all done so already. It's quite interesting. Yeah, I think that's it really. Okay, brilliant. So if we're all happy with that, we'll go ahead with that. And then if there's anything from that we can work from, then we can bring it to another meeting. So future events. which is kind of I know we've talked about a bit about this just now. Is there anything anyone would wanted to mention at this stage? I mean, it's probably something we kind of, you know, perhaps put on the agenda almost all the time. But yes, to Louise, sorry.
I know this is quite a way ahead, but I wondered, we weren't successful this year, the Environment Day, which is the 5th of June, which is the Saturday. I wonder whether we could look to schedule something in, because I'm sure over the summer we'll be able to, you know, do some outdoor stuff. Probably not with the whale, but certainly have stalls from specific groups and maybe other activities. But perhaps we could book that date with Swell to actually have the rec.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Sorry, I was. But yeah, I think we've got to sort of plan ahead. I mean, the only thing I was going to sort of mention was it'd be good to do another climate surgery next year. I think the last one, the one we did back, gosh, it was about a year ago now, I think.
I think it was a year ago this week.
Yeah, which is quite amazing, really, how where we are now. But I think that was really effective. I think it was particularly effective initially because it was kind of shortly after we'd started this committee, so it was kind of a good way of starting to gather information. But it'd be a good way to continue that. But I think it'd be good to sort of update people on where we are, kind of thing. And it could be that we could do that either as a separate event or even do that as part of the Environment Day. Because if outdoor events are going to be the preferable thing, which is probably likely, we could actually have that within as part of that maybe. But yeah, I'm really keen to see another one at some point. Yeah, Councillor Martin.
Yeah, while we're on the subject, perhaps, yes, I agree we should do the climate day thing in the rec, and we should approach Swale for permission to do so and work with the rec warden to do that. I think that would be a worthwhile event, so thank you, Louise, for prompting us on that, because we'd all got the dates wrong otherwise. The other thing I would suggest is that we actually look when the National Tree Week will be next year, 2021, and put that in the diary as well. And let's start building up. And if there are anything that Plastic Free are doing or whatever, let's put them in the diary and see where we go, so that by the time we come to our next meeting, we will have something in there to decide on, and hopefully we'll have much more information. And even if we don't make finalised decisions on things until, I don't know, March, April, May, whenever, at least then we've got them in the diary and we can action them. Because hopefully we'll be able to get there. I'll shut up and let Eddie have his word.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with the conversation that's been had so far. I think that it's very important to get the rec booked, as Louise has suggested, because once we've got that confirmed with Swale, we can then start booking in people to come along, like Plastic Free and the others that we thought of, to ensure they're going to be available on that day. So the sooner we can share that date once it's confirmed, the better.
Yeah, thanks all. Thanks, Louise, for that. Yeah, if we can, I think that makes a lot of sense. Gives us a lot of time to kind of think about and plan it. And you know, as Councillor Martin said, actually anything really that's flagged up as being a significant event or what another organisation's doing would be actually really useful to sort of get a calendar sort of set up for next year of what we're doing. That makes a lot of sense. But we can keep. I mean, we can keep the future events on the agenda for the next meeting, and you know, see where we are and see if there's anything else that has been thought about in the meantime. I think. Anything else on that subject, or is everyone happy with that? Yeah. Okay. So items to report, basically any other business. Yeah, Councillor Perkin.
Yeah, just to update a little bit, Councillor Williams and I have been communicating with Peter around, as in PETA, the Ethical Treatment of Animals UK. They have used some of the motion that was proposed to the Town Council in February last year in terms of cutting down the use of animal products for catering, to put a template motion, which they're sending out to all the councils in the country. So it's actually quite a positive thing that's come out of work that we've done as a Town Council. So I just thought I'd report that back.
It's brilliant. It's really exciting. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Thomas.
I've just shared an email with yourself, Councillor Williams. It was about Trees for Farms, saying that they're going ahead with planting at the moment. So it'd be interesting to know whether or not that bears any relevance to what we're trying to do. So I'll leave it with you, have a read. I've also sent it to Louise, and have a look at it and see whether that allows us to do anything with our trees.
Thank you. I think I've seen some emails from them. I think I'm somewhere along the line and must be in a mailing list, but it's really useful. I don't to see that. I don't because we've mentioned them. I probably should declare an interest, because they are purchasing some trees from my business. I don't know if that's relevant, but just for clarity's sake, I better do it, as we've mentioned Trees for Farms. But yeah, I think in terms of other projects they're doing where they're kind of gathering volunteers and things, I think definitely we should be sort of involving them or communicating with them. I think I know as well Friends of the Earth are quite in touch with them, and I know that they sort of share a lot as well with what they're doing. I think they help a lot with the plantings. So that's really good. So there's some really great organisations doing some really great stuff, even in kind of strange times, which is really great. So I've got something to raise. Actually, any other business? I don't know. The subject of allotments. I don't know whether this is whether I can propose this here at this committee, or whether it should have been proposed at full council. But it was mentioned before about bringing the allotments under this committee, not purely just to have a point of contact or somewhere for Adam Andrews to report to, so if there's any decisions, and basically give him support. And I think it worked well when allotments were under community services. I think it was good to have a committee overseeing the allotments. I mean, I'm quite happy for it to be here or public spaces. I've no sort of attachment, but I just think climate and biodiversity, considering our sort of pesticide-free kind of drive, I think it kind of fits under it. So Louise, is it something I can propose here to go onto this committee, or has it got to go through full council?
I think if we do a recommendation, that will be fine for agreement at full council.
In that case, can I propose that we do that, please? That we recommend to full council that the allotments come under this banner of climate and biodiversity. Yes, I don't know whose hand up was first. I think Councillor Martin.
We're just agreeing with you, Chris.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Just seconding, agreeing.
Yeah, I just think you want to talk, you see. Okay, well, thank you for agreeing. That's great. That'd be great. Is there anything else on any other business? Yeah, Councillor Perkin.
Sorry, I think we should also mention that yourself and myself met with a representative from Anderson's around pesticide-free status for the town, and how, as a developer, they can work with the town council to look at eradicating pesticide use on their premises. So that was quite a constructive and helpful meeting, and it was left that we would send them the pesticide free action plan which has been drafted, and they would have a look at where they could fit in terms of the kind of timeline of them being here as a developer, and also the timeline of how long that pesticide-free action plan is going to take to put in place fully. So yeah, just to raise that it was a constructive meeting.
Yeah, thank you for. I forgot to mention that because it all goes into a blur. But you know, it was a good meeting. I think it's sort of the process of starting to get businesses on board, which was good. So I've sent them the action plan, and so hopefully they'll come back at some point with some constructive comments on what they want to do. That's really good. I've noticed as a member public joined sort of halfway through, Louise. I don't know, she missed the bit at the beginning. I don't know if Louise has anything she wanted to ask. I feel because there's only one member of the public listening, I just feel that so I don't know if you can hear Louise, but was there anything you wanted to raise as a question tonight, or was you just listening?
Oh, hello there. Yes, I just really wanted to thank the committee for all their hard work. And no, I've no particular questions, but thank you all anyway.
Oh, thank you very much.
It's really kind.
Yeah, I think it will work. I think in the future when we oh, hello. Yeah, it's I think from right at the beginning, like we said before, it was really nice to have that engagement on a committee like this, sort of the questions, and I think that will come back. You know, we'll gain that back again once people, either when we come to physical meetings again, or when people start to sort of. But it is difficult. It's difficult to get onto these sort of meetings sometimes. But the fact they're recorded now means people can watch them back anytime. So that's really good. Okay, well, unless there's anything else, I think that will probably conclude the meeting, really. Is that okay? Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you very much.
All.
I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye.